Okay, welcome again, everybody, back to the Maxon booth. I am Louie Tucci, and I am here with the ZBrush crew, along with my colleagues and friends from the Maxon One suite. I'm really excited to be here again, and picking it up where we left off yesterday here at the Maxon booth. Hey, how's it going? Come on down. We're going to do the ZBrush live demo. So, oh faithful ones, you're back for more. I appreciate it. When we last met, we were talking about the armature, the construction of a digital armature inside of the ZBrush space, and all of the dexterity associated with that. I think it's important to note that when we're looking at constructing assets for creatures and characters, for instance, if we take the time to build up phase one here of our construction process using this very simple Z-sphere armature, we can align ourselves with the concept of really working to have a strong silhouette. And you can see it's not much of a departure from the construction of this skeletal structure. This is achieved by putting Z-spheres in places where you want to have volume. So let's take a look at a really quick Louie Tucci inspired review of what's going to happen here. So I'm going to come here, and again, if you're just joining us today for the first time, this is to meet the requirements of finding our little friend here inside of our Maxonaut space as our creature. And so it's always nice to arrive on a unfriendly or friendly planet and sort of have a big takeover. But I anticipate that these little people want to be taken over, and they'll be dancing with glee and joy before the demo is done. So there'll be a bit of creepiness happening here. So with this, this is the context. Thank you very much. I'm Louie Tucci. We're going to have, this is the context for our presentation, to have some kind of accompaniment for our Maxonaut, as I call him. And again, if we press this, you'll see that we've also got, in a preconceived way, a head inside of there. It's just going to take a second to render. And you'll see inside of the glass, there is a Maxonaut. And here he comes. So there's our guy, very Thunderbirds, as you can see. I just aged myself completely. So, carrying on. Here is our alien armature, and where we left off yesterday was with this simple idea of, I'm going to turn perspective off, of course. So let's do it really quickly and demonstrate once again that now that we're in the edit mode and we're drawing here continually inside of this symmetry mode, I hit the Q key to come into draw mode, and I'm just going to place one here. Okay, and it's as simple as clicking on the surface of that area in between the two Z-spheres. So you'll see that the Z-sphere, if I press W, and of course the number one priority is to make your brush size smaller so that you can manage this area specifically. If I click and drag on there, I make a new one. I'll say Control Z. If I simply come and say W, or the move button here, I can move this like so. All right, and getting ready for the party tonight. Not to be confused with this move here, which is a different kind of move. Okay, and you can see the kinematic relationship, though. I mean, I'm poking fun at it, but it is really actually quite robust and quite useful. Again, vesting this for later, what you're doing is you're ultimately building a rig. And the rig will allow you to bind to the character. And hopefully before the end of this demonstration, I will show you how to bind it and pose the character. Hey, it's the ZBrush hour, come on down. So again, if I press E, I'm going to scale these down. And I think that these types of alien individuals who we're looking to build should probably be quite mediocre in their construction as they're being conquered by our Maxonaut. I'll press W and I'll be able to move this around. And so again, you want to adhere to some kind of physiological construction. I know we get really mired in the discussion on anatomy. I'm not an anatomy snob, but it sure helps to know some of the stuff. If I press the R key, which is the rotate, so we're just focusing in on this area here, move, scale, and rotate, we get this. And that's going to allow you from it. So this would be the parent-child relationship that we're all very familiar with when it comes to rigging. Here's the parent of this whole group, and we get, hello, my baby, hello, my honey, hello, my ragtime gal. And that's the stuff of legend. So if you do it in between one point or one parent-to-child relationship, what you get is a succinct movement here. That's a breaker, right? Oh, be still, Priscilla. Okay, so if I Control Z, I can step back. If I say W, I'm going to move this like this. And again, looking at it from a silhouette-based standpoint, I might want to push this in a little bit more. And I want to have one of those creepy, Chad, you've inspired me today with those creeps that you showed earlier. I think we got the creep show happening, the creep show. I'd like to have something that is maybe going to, so I'll turn it like this, and I'll say maybe something that's leaning forward a bit. And you can see that we can manage this like so. And then maybe the arms are going to come down, and you can say W and pull this down further and elongate, maybe as one of them knuckle draggers. Okay? And so at some point you're going to be like, all right, that's kind of cool. They finally come to save us. The Maxonauts are here. Or if you change your mind, you can come here and say E and make the scale of this a little larger. So perhaps there's a musculature. Now, you probably want to put one based on our physical construction. Another one might go here. So it'd say draw, and you'd click here and just click on there and say E and scale it this way. I can scale the entire group by going in between the parent and first child and grow the entire selection like so. So already, by just doing a few, smooth criminal, just kidding. I'm going to try to contain myself. This is being recorded. Okay, and so in this case, we've got this happening. And I know that we can, sort of move things around and get it to a point where maybe it's all right. If you change your mind and you'd like to delete one of the Z-spheres, it's super important to note that if you just press draw and hold the Option key or the Alt key on your PC, you're going to be able to click on these and get rid of them. It's that easy. It's literally, I could do it with like my mouse and like one button, or not wave at my friends and be clicking on there and getting rid of them, okay? So with that being said, I'll just Control Z, and you've got the history timeline here, which is also quite useful. Okay, so I'll step back to something like that. And let's just go ahead and say that's good enough for what we've got. The next phase, right? Whoops. The next phase will see us transition from this armature. And of course, the armature is going to be left here inside of our tool area. And I said this yesterday. I'd like to compound this because I know a lot of people are coming into this for the first time. The tool area is where you would consider your assets are being brought into the space, and you're going to be able to call upon them. So I've already got like a preloaded secondary stage for this project. So I'm going to say Shift S to drop this to the canvas. Just for visual purposes, I'm going to show that this was the starting point, and then I click here and I've got my second one here, and it's already been converted to what we're going to do with this one. So this is like a step in between, okay? Let's go back for a moment. I want to slow down for my colleagues and say Command N. I'm going to look at this, and so the natural question would be, hey Claire, I'm so glad you asked. Funny you should mention it. If you scroll down to the bottom here, inside of this adaptive skin menu, what we're going to do is we've got this preview mode, and we can look at the preview of what that's going to look like as a sculptable asset. So in this particular case, we're looking at let's call it the rig, or the armature, and in this case, we're looking at the preview for it. Now, again, Ian earlier was alluding to something called Dynamesh, and you can see here we've got a very, very low-res asset, which has, historically been quite significant. That's probably the best way to work. With the advent of certain things like Unreal Engine, you can just load things in there at a gabillion polygons. No one really cares anymore. And by the time we're finished with this demo, they probably have version 6 out, and you can just load it straight away. So I'll hit the preview button just to take a look. So you can select the resolution here or here. If I select the density slider here, and I'm in preview mode with the Dynamesh off, I'm going to say 3, and that's going to subsequently give us a smoother mesh. Okay, and this is linked to something later on that you would get into, which is called subdivision modeling. Okay, and that is actually the ZBrush was awarded. We were sort of successful in in winning an Oscar award for technical achievement, and that's the technical achievement point of it. It is the first software of its kind to have multi-level mesh editing capability. That is a technical achievement that we're talking about, and this is was unheard of and a proprietary thing inside of ZBrush alone, which sets it apart from its competitors, if there were competitors at all. So, I was being very humble about that. Once you've got this set up like this, let's pretend that I had a Dynamesh function. So Dynamesh, dynamic mesh, right? Dynamic mesh means that we've got a setup here at, let's say, I don't know, 256 might be really aggressive. Let's go with, I don't know, 64. 64 is fine. I'll say preview. That's a 64 setting, okay? And that's a pretty good starting point. So I would then say make adaptive skin, and let's pretend I did that. The cooking show continues live on the floor from the Adobe MAX conference in the LA Convention Center. I'm your host. So let's go here, and we've got it now set up like so. Okay, so I've pressed the adaptive skin button. In phase 1, we were here with our, I'll turn this off, our Z-sphere armature. Shift S to drop it to the canvas for observation purposes. I click here, and now we're back to this skin. We've got Dynamesh active, we can tell, because we've got some triangulation in the composition of our asset. So let's get to the fun part, finally. Control N to clear the canvas, Shift F to take a look at this. And ideally, I just say Control W to start with. Now, in keeping with traditional methodologies, the point of, hey, how's it going? Bring that sugar over here and take a look at this ZBrush demo. Come on now. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Control key, and I'm going to select the selection lasso here, or the mask lasso, and I'm going to select these like this, just like you would in a traditional sculpting studio. And now I'm going to say Control W. And why would you do this, Louie? I'm going to hold Control plus the Shift key, and we don't need to cut like a knife. No, we're going to take a selection cube, or a selection square, and I'm going to select this and get rid of that, and now I can work on my torso development. So I'm going to change my brush to the damn standard brush. I like to note as well that I'm going to reduce my intensity down to anything below 15. It's probably the best case scenario to work with very controlled strokes. The brushes I use are as follows. The damn standard brush, which looks something like this. I've got symmetry on, and it will allow me to start scoring the surface of where my rib cage is going to be for this little creeper. I'll hold the shift key and smooth this down as well. So this allows you to relax the polygons. And you're just, you want to think about this like in Maya, I think it's, what is it, the smooth function in Maya? Is that right? Anyway, that's my ancient training. So I'm just holding the smooth function. The second brush that I would use is going to be called the clay brush, and it's here. I'll turn off the RGB for posterity, and I'll bring this down. You can see it's set to 50. So if I keep it really high, you're going to get that kind of response, Control Z. I'll bring it down again also to something lower than 15. And now I can start to build in this content here. And so I'll smooth this out, and again, B, D, S for damn standard allows me to come here and cut this like so. So scoring the surface and manipulating this from an illustration standpoint is the key here to get started. Again, I've done this so I can isolate this area here, the pectoralis here, and let's call these guys pseudo-humanoids. Okay, and that'll just give us the opportunity to do something like that in a very quick, and the abdominal region will be something like this. And you can see very quickly with like 8 strokes, we've already got the basic premise. Why am I doing this like this? I'm doing this like this for ultimately something that is known as edge flow. And if we consider edge flow when constructing 3D assets, what we're doing is we're isolating this concept of the continual increase in resolution. If I score the surface like so, when the mesh is reconstructed, that detail, and this is also one of the functions inside of ZBrush, that detail is going to carry over across all subdivision levels as the point of reference for the directional flow of those polygons and points, okay? And already we can see that it's working out to our advantage. Let's hit the back end here a little bit. It's glute and sort of, I guess, like leg day, every day. We'll reduce this down again. Now, something to be very aware of when you're sculpting like this is that the distance between the front faces and the back faces, and there's that key terminology. I believe that it's really a matter of like when teaching anything to someone, if you can learn the language of the discipline or the discourse, you know, it's very specific. So we say, oh, what is the term for that? Well, it's called back face masking. And I go into the brush menu, and on a per brush basis, I can come here to auto masking and say back face mask, which is going to allow for me to sculpt on this side without penetrating through to the other side. So in certain cases, like for instance, fingers, if we had more time, like an hour-long demo, I'd get to doing a hand. And I actually have one predetermined here, so shame on me, because I was lying. Ha ha ha. Okay, so here's like what we were talking about. So this might be something thinner in its construction, okay? And in that particular case, we might say, well, it might go through and penetrate and cause a bit of a visual disturbance. Sorry. With that being said, we've got that turned on, and now we can attack this rear region. That's funny. We can attack the rear region and make some modifications and changes without affecting the other side. Here, we'll probably come in here and isolate some scapula, or what would be essentially the scapula. Holding the Alt key is going to let me knock this back a bit. And then I'm going to build up this area here by reducing the neck. I like longer necks. It really communicates. This is looking more human than we want it to. So we can start to hold the Control key and really stretch some things out. Let's go ahead and blur this. We'll hold Control and click on the mask to blur it. I hold Control and click in the open area to invert the mask selection. Now I can say W, and what we're going to get is essentially this gizmo, which is the issue that I'm having here is that I've got the other parts of this project floating around and it's adhering to that. So I'm going to come here and just rotate that with this unlocked. It's just a gizmo like we would use in any other application. I turn it, and if I hold Shift, it snaps in increments of 5 degrees. I'll lock this again, and now I can just pull this down and displace that really simply. And we're going to get into that space where we're going to get away with something pretty Quasimodo-like. I'll hold Control, mask this again. So if I change this back to the mask pen, I can just do this like this, and I'll just blur this. I'll hold Control and click on the surface, invert it. I've blurred it so that it's easier to work with. I unlock it, I go to the center of the masked area, I reorient it, and again, increments of 5 degrees, or just do it manually, and push these up. Okay, and you can see here I'm doing this with great purpose. I want to specifically demonstrate to you that in the most free of senses, you should be able to work like this without concern for the topological construction of the asset. You probably think, like, what does he mean? I hold Control and I click and drag to clear the mask, and then I navigate with looking at Shift F, and I see that I've got this terrible overlap. This would traditionally have caused, so this is another moment of time in the ZBrush lexicon where the parameters and the ramifications of certain workflows were completely obliterated. When we think of like traditional modeling circumstances, this would be like a pain in the butt, and you would say, what, does this person not know what they're doing, or what? Like, who models like that? Well, with a simple click of a button here inside of the Geometry tab, which is the Dynamesh function, I'm going to click on this and just turn this down to like, I don't know, like 128 or 112 is fine. I hold Control, click and drag, and we get reconstruction of our asset. So at this point, we're looking at it and saying, maybe not enough resolution. Yesterday when I talked about resolution, I meant that resolution was a principal term inside of the space of ZBrush. It is either going to be an inhibitor or an enabler. And so if I want to keep some of the detail that's here, I'd be wise to increase this to something a little more robust in this number. The project function is here as well, and that'll allow us to hold Control, click and drag, and now we've got a projection with a more dense mesh. The active point count is 22,000, okay? And in that case, we can continue to work. And you can see here the recomposition and construction of that leg region. If I just simply shrink my brush by saying draw size here in the draw size slider, and then hold the shift key, I can smooth it out. I make a change to the asset, and then I hold Control and click and drag one more time, and we reconstruct and we have repaired any kind of sort of derelict approach to modeling. And I say derelict because I think that that's something that should be thrown up in the wind and just let sort of to flow away. There is really nothing stopping us from creating something quite robust and in an artistic, sculptural way. Back again to this concept of isolating this by holding the Control and Shift key to select that poly group that we made earlier. I can turn like so and get back to isolating this. I don't like how low the butt is riding at this point. I said that this person, or whatever it is going to do leg and butt day all day. So we'll go to the brushes by pressing the B. And again, the M key is the hotkey for move. Hey, welcome to the ZBrush show. I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to increase the size by pressing S and then pull this up. And you can see that because we've kept the resolution at a manageable number of points and faces, we're able to move more of the clay quickly without an inhibition, right? So if this had been a more dense model, you would have a little bit slower time of moving it around. That's not something to sort of look at as a negative thing, but just for expedience or expediency's sake, we can do it like this. So here we are, Shift F again. A good place to sort of, Control Z. I'll hold the Shift key and reduce my smoothing function down a little bit. And I'm just going to get in here real quick with the clay brush, reduce this down to something like 10. Sorry, hold this like this, and now I can just isolate this again and build this out for you guys. And you're very sort of kind to watch. But let's go ahead and invent some musculature real quickly without worrying too much about the anatomical construction of this. I can get away with some pretty clean stuff. I'll give him a little belly. Maybe he's been drinking the brew on his planet. Strange brew, killing what's inside of you. Too much? That was Eric Clapton for my friend in the back there, Mr. Walker. Right? And then B, D, S for the damp standard brush to give the tush. So a really neat function inside of ZBrush while you're sculpting. Oh my God, that was the most perfect line I've ever drawn. Never fear, friends. You press the 1 key and it repeats. And that's really functional because you can get away with this. You say, well, I'd like it to be a little deeper. I'm not going to try to go over it again. Just press 1 and it'll redo your brush stroke. And now I can see that here. Chop this away. We got the lower lumbar in this case. Maybe give them some kind of goiter. Everybody likes a goiter right about there. Nothing more attractive on a Saturday night. Okay, and so pretty cool. Again, the same process would be true for the facial construction. I would then just navigate to the head. I start to work out what the head could look like. Again, navigating between the two tools. And it's a really short amount of time without seeming sort of like I'm in a rush, which would be a disservice to us as viewers. I think this is a good way to start off with your ZBrush adventures. The other thing is you notice that there's no hands. There's a secondary function in the selection brushes, which is the knife curve, and it allows me to hold Control and Shift and click like this, and then double click on the Alt key to chop it off like that. And then re-dynamesh it by holding Control and clicking and dragging. So there's never a point. What is the function of this demonstration? To show you that it is very much, my intention is for you to walk away with the concept or the idea that making a digital asset inside a ZBrush could be as easy as using only 3 brushes and functionally creating the basic construction of an asset or a 3D digital sculpture just the way you would in a traditional studio. So imagine we'd started with, as you saw, our armature. And now in a very short period of time, again, I mean, I'm not undermining or sort of diminishing the value of hard work and the time it takes to do these things, but with some focus and just a simple number of brushes, we can get from this to this in a very short amount of time. If I come here and again, I can reduce this. The other brush that I would use, not to mention the clay brush, of course, at these lower resolutions allows us to make gradual shifts and changes. So I'm holding the Alt key there and reducing backwards some of the functional volumes that we've added. So additive and subtractive work processes to come to terms with the forms and the overall construction of this thing's overall physiological construction. That's really what we're after. And again, most of this personality would be in gesture and body. So let's finish off this demonstration with a rigging demonstration. And here comes the rigging part. So I have the asset sitting here, I'll say Control N. Rigging inside of ZBrush, happening now live at the Maxon booth. The one and only. Okay, so we have this, this skeleton. And I'd like to say down at the bottom, it's going to allow me. Now there's one caveat when working like this. You're gonna have to have had the mesh for this guy here selected, okay, and that's the active tool. And when you come into here, you're gonna click and you're gonna say, okay, down at the bottom inside of the rigging menu, I say rigging and I say select mesh. So now I look inside my active tools and I find, oh, there's my bod. I say select the mesh, and I might, whoopsie daisy. Let's do that again, select mesh. Where's my skin? Okay. I think I might have moved something here. Oh, there it is, yeah. So I did, I moved it and that's on me because I moved the asset. So what you want to do is make sure that you select, I'll just grab the one that is in the same place as that. Okay, and you can see there's another one here, and there it is. So that was my fault, I just picked the wrong tool. I had made a module of shift in motion there, using the gizmo. Okay, so now we've got them both in the same place at the same time. Our rig is located here, and then I would say bind mesh, and now watch what we can do. And this is the actual really fundamentally important part. I can say R, and now when I come here with symmetry on, we're gonna move and we're gonna stretch our model. So we would do this in such a way that it allowed us to work out a really cool pose initially before going too far, right? And you can see that we're making this change to the asset with the rig in place, okay? And again, we can Control Z that, and you could break the symmetry and say, okay, well, I'm gonna do this like this. I'm gonna have this leg like this. And already I can say with R, I can rotate this way on axis. Okay, and by doing that, what we're doing is we're saying, all right, we're gonna shift this way and get some contrapposto. Okay, and again, this is a rudimentary demonstration. I mean, it's 29 minutes, but you can start to see the value, I hope, of some of this stuff. Here, if I say R again, I'm able to rotate this arm like this, and you see there's a stretching happening. You can fix all of that, not in post, but in the sculpting process. That was a bit of a joke. Okay, and I'll just extend this back a little bit, bring it down like so. And so you can achieve very dynamic structure for your models like so. We've got that weight and balance happening there. And I think that's it's a pretty good place to sort of take a look and analyze what's happening here. And now you'd say, okay, that's cool. Go to adaptive skin and say, make adaptive skin. By making the adaptive skin, what we've done is we've created an asset that is in pose. And that would be sort of how you would move forward with that. I think that is a wrap, if I'm not mistaken. And I'd like to thank you for your attention. There's a myriad of information available inside of Z Classroom. Again, Z Classroom is being redeveloped as we speak to take into consideration all of the wonderful new things that are happening. I'm Louie Tucci on behalf of the entire Maxon team around the globe. We're so pleased you could be here to watch this series of demonstrations. Yeah, until next time, thanks so much. Any questions? I know that's a lot of information. Okay, so in this particular case, what I'm looking at is 20,000 points. Now, if I were to come here and say, just for whatever reason, you know what I mean, Dynamesh, I get a little hairy, Ian comes by and throws me a chocolate brownie, I get a little courageous. I turn this off, I say hold control, I click and drag, 94,000, okay? So 94,000 is a little bit more dense. So now when I come back down over here to this armature, right? I'm gonna come over here and when I click on bind, or when I click on bind again, what's gonna happen is, excuse me, I probably need glasses at this point. I'm gonna snap that back. So there's no relationship there, and now I can say delete mesh. This gives me access to my armature one more time. So you could create a series of armatures in advance, and then fundamentally build the sculptures around them, right? You're gonna have a whole series of library of armatures. I've got a whole series of Z-Sphere armature videos that should be forthcoming in the Z Classroom in the next couple of months. So it's an entire series on the process of doing that. So I'm gonna come back up here, and what I'm gonna say is, okay, once again, make sure that this was the selected asset. That's the key point actually when doing this, is that you come into this tool menu and make sure that in the subtools you've got this one selected, because it's a call and answer routine, right? It's gonna come back to this guy here. Where is it? Yeah, that's the one. I say F, and now I'm gonna go back down to my rigging, And inside of the rigging tab, I'm going to come and say select mesh, and now you've got what? You've got body number 2. This is the one here. And because it was moved, you know, I can mess with this in a myriad of ways. This is a huge issue at this point because of where the location of this thing is. So before we get away with that, we probably want to come back here. And this is I'm glad I made that mistake to show you that. You say, how would I repair that? Well, you'd come back over here and you take a look and say, like this is, do I come back and move this thing, or can I move this thing down? I can certainly move this thing down from this deformation tab and say offset in Y. Okay? And you can see now I can just grind this guy down and put this bad boy right into place. Close enough for rock and roll for where we are right now, okay? We're not going to hold each other to task on this. All right, so I come here. I don't remember when I moved it, but for all intents and purposes, here it is. Okay, so close enough, it's embedded. So we're going to say, that's way off. This could be a fun little experiment. I did move this I moved it out of the, off the center. So knowing that, again, is going to be one of these situations where I say offset, and it's going to be in Z, right? Because Z is that way, always facing forward. And I'm going to move this forward like this. And yeah, there was definitely going to be a point order problem in this case. So I would just basically redo a few things and then do it. Let's see if it'll bind. If it binds, I'll be very surprised. It'll be actually a moment of triumph. Ian, if it binds, I'll be very surprised. Okay, let's see what happens. I'll say R, and it did work. And you can see the pulling happening there. And that's exactly what I was hoping to show you, was that by increasing the resolution in that particular case, what we've done is we've increased the number of points that will be attracted, which is the real value of that question, is that the node, or the parent-child relationship, also has what we call like the painted weights inside of another application. That would be the equivalent of not having to paint the weights or painting the weights. And so by saying this particular Z-sphere at this point now has an influence on more points and faces than it did in the previous constructed model. So what you would have in that particular guise is that now you can see why we would work with a lower resolution mesh to get the pose down and then work with the subdivision modeling process afterward.